We are activating your unique self-discovery one show at a time. The Orchard of Wisdom Self-Discovery podcast are at your fingertips, just waiting to inspire and invite you in discovering just how awesome you really are and how to navigate through life in joy, enrichment, personal abundance, in mind, body, spirit, heart, and soul. All the people we bring you are here to serve you on your journey of life. Do enjoy our next show. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Your Health is Your Choice right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my guest is Stuart Waldner. The Meatrix, what does that all about? Escaping from the Meatrix. Well, the Meatrix is about going meatless and not being trapped in the Meatrix syndrome, like you have to have meat. I love the way he does this. He says he's offering you the red pill. Are you ready to take it? And it's not just about veganism. It's not just about plant-based foods. It's about everything. You know, your health, the health of the planet, our entire climate change, and everything else that we're going to be talking about today. Though Stuart did not set out to be an environmental food activist, after transitioning to a plant-based lifestyle in 2008, feeling better physically, he set out to uncover the statistical connections between dietary choices and the worldwide crisis that we're facing. His new eye-opening book, Escaping the Meatrix, is a wake-up call for those willing to face the facts that he says his book isn't just for vegans, it's for folks trapped in the Meatrix. So what is the Meatrix? How do we escape it? What is the environmental impact? Well, we're going to be discovering all of that today. And, you know, again, life is a choice. Your health is a choice. But when you are informed of what those choices can cost you, then you can make better choices. And that's what it's all about. Welcome to the show, Stuart.
Thank you, Sarah. It's great to be here, and it's a pleasure to speak with you today. I fully support what you just said. You know, I'm all about helping people make informed decisions, and I think the science in my book will help people make better choices, starting with the food on their plates. Mm-hmm. You know, I talk about the Matrix as the world that we in Western culture were born into. And what I'm saying by that is I'm using the world in the Matrix movies as a metaphor for our world. So in the Matrix movies, artificial intelligence has taken over the planet and is using humans as an energy source. And I say our world is like the Matrix because humans have taken over this planet and we're using farmed animals as our energy source.
Yeah, it's quite scary when you look at it in that way. And the thing is that since the beginning of time, you know, before they understood agriculture and planting things and making things grow, they would go after whatever animal was there as a source of food. We have evolved. And, you know, my daughter and her husband are 100% vegan. I'm 80%. You know, I've got that 20% if I'm, you know, if I'm in a situation, but I'm 80% and honor that. At home I'm 100%. People think, I just posted actually because it's Thanksgiving here. We've just had Thanksgiving here in Canada, and I posted a picture of our vegan Thanksgiving meal. And, you know, so many people, oh, it looks delicious. And a lot of people think that being vegan or going plant food is lettuce and a tomato. They have no idea how many advancements have been made now on meat substitute, even fish. You can eat it without even knowing that you are.
Yeah, it's amazing. The plant-based foods have really come a long, long way in the last few years. And even before that, you know, when I would go to my parents' house for our Thanksgiving, which is in November, or Christmas, I would take plant-based food and everyone in the family would just eat it up. They loved it. And I would go home with an empty dish at the end of the meal.
Shucks, you wanted leftovers.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, people have this idea that plant-based eaters are, like you said, just eating lettuce and that our food tastes like cardboard, and it doesn't. I mean, it's so flavorful and it's delicious, and you can have a plant-based version of just about any meal. You know, you can come up with a plant-based version of it, and it's so much better for you and the planet and the animals. And there's so many recipes online, so it's just never been easier or tastier, I think.
No, and so many restaurants are offering the vegan, option now because they know that more and more it's on the demand. And why is it more and more on the demand? Well, there's a lot of different ways of looking at it. Health reasons, is much healthier for you. And, we really weren't designed to digest meat. And, vegetables, people that, well, where's your calcium? Where's your protein? Where's your that? Look at vegetables and what they offer you. And very often they offer you more than that piece of steak that you've got on your plate. And you can live extremely healthily. In fact, many, many people who have had health issues have turned to plant-based foods and found that whatever was troubling them, it no longer troubles them. And they are really thriving and being very, very healthy. But on the other scale of the things, we've also got to look at, we're no longer looking at farm animals that were treated respectfully, killed respectfully, if you can call it that. We are in the world of manufacturing animals now, and it's totally inhumane. It is, it drives up, our water, the methane, just the sheer atrocities that are happening to these animals. And we've got to understand something. That cheap burger that you're having, that meat that is in there is coming from a terrified animal. You are eating the terror of that animal, and I promise you it's changing the chemistry in your body.
Yeah, I think it's true. These animals are in horrible conditions, factory farming. Some people say, well, not all animals are, being reared on factory farms, but the statistics in my book say that, over 70% of the cattle are factory farmed, and then 98 to 99% of all poultry, that's chicken for meat, chicken for eggs, turkeys, and then pigs, are factory farmed. And these conditions are really deplorable and disgusting. We have factory farms here in Kentucky, where I'm from, and in the rural areas, of course, because the Meatrix doesn't want people to see these factory farms. So it kind of hides them in rural areas.
Or hear the cries,
Exactly.
Yeah.
But a chicken farm, you will smell it way before you ever see it. It's quite offensive.
Yeah. And, it's unnecessary. Today we have so much more education on what can sustain our bodies. And, we have more obesity, more type 2 diabetes, more heart problems today than ever before. And I think you can most certainly look at the stress factor as being kind of stress, anxiety being number one, but diet. And it's so many of the foods that we eat today have got antibiotics in them, preservatives in them, chemicals to stabilize them on the shelf, all of these things that we're taking in, and our body just doesn't like it. So it rebels.
That's right. I advocate for a whole foods plant-based diet, which is, it contains all the nutrients that we need. Like you said, the United States Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics says that plant foods offer all the nutrients that we need to be healthy at any stage of life. So the idea that we need to have meat is something that is promoted by the meat and dairy industries. The science doesn't back it up. So the science in my book shows that we don't need these products. It is not necessary. And it uncovers the truth about what it's doing to our bodies and to the planet, and of course to the animals.
Yeah, exactly. I have an 18-month-old grandson who's 100% vegan. He was 100 percentile on his growth chart there, a healthy little bruiser, and it's like everything is just entirely vegan for him. And he's doing extremely well. Right.
That's great.
And a large baby at that, from my daughter just having veganism. And again, if you're willing to get out of the stereotype mindset, the Meatrix, as you call it, and give something else a try. There is the wonderful ground, well, it's not, I don't even call it ground beef, but ground plant-based meat that you can have, make into a burger, make into cottage pie, make into tacos and everything else, and you wouldn't know the difference. You would not know. And absolutely flavorful and delicious and much better for you.
That's true. It's come such a long way. Things have been happening in this past year that would have been unthinkable in years past. So for instance, in London, Leicester Square, the Burger King there was closed for remodeling. And in March, it reopened. And for the first month, it served 100% plant-based foods. That's all it served. And this menu that they created had 25 different menu items, and it took them years to develop it. Why would Burger King go to such trouble? It's because this is the future. This is what we're going to be moving towards. And I really like what Burger King in Austria has done just, I think, August of this year. So when you go to order a burger at Burger King's in Austria, the person at the counter will ask you, do you want a normal burger or one with meat? So this is amazing, because this is what I'm saying in my book. We have a choice.
Yes.
We have been born into the Matrix, and we have been indoctrinated that we need these products. And here's
meat and
Burger
potato,
King,
right?
Yeah. And here's Burger King saying, making people, forcing them to have a conscious choice about whether they want the normal burger, which is plant-based. And I love that they're making the normal burger, a burger that comes from plants, or do they want the meat? And so it's forcing people to make that conscious choice. And then the other thing that happened also in Europe, the United States is lagging behind in so many parts of this. And just outside of Amsterdam, a city recently banned all public advertising of meat. And that would be unheard of in the United States. But why do they do that? Because advertising works. I mean, it gets people to consume more and more and more of the products, and is detrimental to the health and to the planet and to the animals. So I think these are big, big changes, and I really love sharing this information with people. I'm really passionate about it, as you can tell. I'm really excited. No, I think it's going to take individuals to change.
Yes.
We vote with our dollars. Every time we go to the grocery store or go to a restaurant, we're voting with our dollars. And so we can make a choice. We can choose the red pill and escape the Matrix, or we can stay in the Matrix. But if we stay in the Matrix, that's tantamount to maintaining the status quo. And if you just look at the news, you can see where the status quo is leading us. I mean, climate change, emerging infectious diseases, environmental degradation, biodiversity loss, mass extinction rates, our declining health, the horrible return on investment of animal agriculture. I mean, this is what's happening in our world. And if we just stay with the blue pill, we're going to get more of the same. So I really encourage people to read my book, follow the science. Everything in my book has been fact checked, and this isn't just my opinion. This is what science is saying. So again, I want people to make better, more informed decisions that I think will lead to a better world for everybody and less needless suffering, because the suffering that is happening for the animals and for our health, it is needless.
Yes.
We don't have to have that. Benjamin Franklin said an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I think it's best to become plant-based before we develop one of these chronic conditions like heart disease, diabetes, hypertension. But if you have those conditions, it is proven that a plant-based lifestyle offers a way out of that. You can reverse that or stabilize that. And so an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I think that the plant-based lifestyle that I adopted back in 2008 is the ounce of prevention I needed. So I don't need a cure.
Right. Well, my brother had a heart attack 9 years ago, and he immediately went vegan. Well, no, the story goes further. He immediately went vegan, and he recently had another heart attack. And it turns out he has a defective heart, which our father died of heart. But they're saying because he went plant-based for 9 years, that this heart attack would have been inevitable. But he delayed it for so long because of his lifestyle. And, the heart is, defective. It's just one of those things. He's having stents put in. But it's veganism is most certainly that gave him back his life then. The other thing, many, many years ago, I did a wonderful interview with Greg Bauer, and it was about farm sanctuary and rescuing animals from that horrific abuse and giving them the respect of life. And I remember bringing up a question because his was also about how much water we use in the production of manufacturing let's say just cows, how much water we
Yes.
use, how much methane gas is going up into the air, and how much is actually taking from our resources as opposed to
Yeah.
what it's feeding. And, I said to him, okay, what happens if we stop buying meat? What happens to the animals? And as he said, we stop producing animals. We
That's right.
actually look at the farm animals as beautiful creatures that they were meant to be on this planet. Who decided they were food? Well, back in the Neanderthal, when they didn't know how to plant vegetables or things like that, that's something they discovered along the way, grain and everything else. Meat
Right.
was their source of survival, but we're no longer in the dark ages. And you can still have the pleasure of a hamburger or, meatballs on your spaghetti and everything else. It just doesn't have to come from a cow or from a pig. There's so many other foods out there now that you can have that you can still enjoy. And, mushroom is just wonderful because it's, a portobello mushroom burger. You've got that chewy texture that you want, right? But without the meat. But, let's face it, humans treat each other atrociously.
Yes.
We really do. So for them then to treat animals atrociously, without any conscience, without any accountability, goes kind of without saying, because they choose not to live in a conscious environment of the pain they're inflicting. Basically, they're people in pain that want to inflict pain on others to counteract their own pain, and they don't care. When we actually step up and go, this animal had to suffer to be on my plate. How can I in good conscience eat it? How can I eat, how can I devour something that has had to suffer for me?
I want to say that I've done numerous interviews, podcast, radio interviews for my book, which just launched yesterday. You're the first person who's talked about the well-being of animals. And I think that says a lot. People don't want to talk about this issue. It makes them very uncomfortable.
I know it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You don't have change,
but we have
discomfort,
Yeah, we have to have this conversation.
Yes.
It's uncomfortable to talk about climate change too, and that we have to change how we're living our lives. But, it's a discussion that we have to have. And I'm so delighted that you're bringing this up, because most people don't think about it. We are, like I said, we're indoctrinated and we're conditioned to just go to the store and buy the body parts of these animals and not think about where that body part came from. I'll give you an example. Just the other day, I got a piece of mail and it said, Stuart Waldner, you're invited to a very special dinner. You're a VIP guest. And on the cover of the envelope was a fork with 3 pieces of steak on it. And they were saying that I'm going to be a VIP at this special meal, and they're going to have this.
You obviously didn't know who you were.
Exactly, they didn't know me. Most people would look at that and they would think, "Oh wow, yeah, I am important. If they're going to give me a steak, and this is a great meal." And it's free, I'm going to go. I looked at that and I thought about the animal. Where did that steak come from? I thought about the quality of the life of that animal. In my mind, I was thinking, where did this animal live? And then I thought, well, how did this animal die? And I thought, what was the impact of, feeding and nurturing this animal? I thought about the quality of life and all the things that went into creating that meat, the harm that it did to the animal and to the planet. And most people don't see that. When you're living in the Meatrix, you just see a delicious piece of meat. But when you take the red pill and escape, then you start seeing the world from a different lens, and you start seeing what I think is more the reality of the world that we're living in, and not just something that we want to not think about, because the harm is happening whether we want to see it or not. And that's why the Meatrix puts slaughterhouses and factory farms out in rural areas where most people don't see it, because if people knew actually what happened, or hear it, if people knew the harm that was happening to animals, they would object to it. There was a study that was done here in the United States, and I think 94% of people said that factory farmed animals should be treated in a way that inflicts the least amount of harm
Mm-hmm.
to them. That's 94%. Well, as a plant-based eater, I can tell you all harm that comes to animals is unnecessary. We don't need the animals. We don't need to harm them at all. We can live a very happy, healthy life and never harm an animal.
There are so many foods out. I mean, you look at, various parts of Asia that are all, plant or, seed-based, spice-based. And they, meat was just not something they ate or could afford. So it was all, legumes and I can see it. It's round. It's white. I've gone blank. And kidney beans and what are the things I'm talking about? You make. Oh God, you'll come to me in a moment.
Okay.
but it's this hemp seeds are so healthy. Put onto the food and. Flaxseed and all of these things that can regulate you, that boost you up, that sustain you. Everything is there. I think a lot of the reason, there's two things here. There's one, mindlessly just doing what everybody else has ever done, and don't want to take responsibility or rock the boat. It's always happened. Who cares? So I'm just going to carry on. The other part is it means actually taking responsibility for your own health. This show is called Your Health is Your Choice, and is what we put in our body is what is going to manifest the health of our body. And so, yes, it may take you a little while with the plant-based food to find, and there's so many books out there now, and I've done so many shows on it as well, even sharing recipes, what people can use, the benefits of which vegetable over another that gives you this nutrition and that nutrition. But it may take you a little while to kind of dance them all together. To make sustainable meals that you're getting everything for. All right, treat it as an adventure. Look at it as an exploration. This is something, instead of the same old meat and potatoes all the time, or the burger done this way or this or that. Let's explore what other avenues are and what other tastes you can have from it. What other ethnic type foods you can try that have been using this way of eating for so long. It's get out of your rut.
Yeah, that made me think of a review that someone did on my book, and it said, "Are you tired of the meat doldrums in your life?" They said, "Read this book and reap." So reaping the profits of it for your health and for the planet and for the animals. So, it's it's so much better to explore dietary choices, and I love that your show is about helping people make informed decisions. And that's what like I said, that's what I'm all about with my book, is trying to provide the science behind why a plant-based lifestyle is so powerful. And I share a lot of different things, but one of the things that the National Institute of Health said is they sent a memo to every doctor in the United States telling physicians that they should recommend a plant-based lifestyle to all their patients, especially those with cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and obesity. And when do you think that memo was, Sarah?
In the trash.
No, well, maybe once it hit the doctor's offices, but it was sent. When did you think it was sent?
I don't know.
It was sent in 2013, almost 10 years ago. And, my doctor has never asked me about the foods I eat, not once. And I'll talk about in my book why it is that many physicians never broach the subject of nutrition with their patients. But here is the National Institute of Health. Their whole mission is about keeping us healthy, telling doctors to recommend just what you and I are talking about today. But and so I don't know why doctors' offices don't have advertisements for plant-based eating instead of pharmaceuticals products. But the problem is, with a plant-based diet, you can't put it into a pill form.
Right.
No one can, the pharmaceutical industry cannot bottle that up and sell it back to us, but they sell us pills for conditions that we have based on a poor diet, without ever talking about the root cause of the problem, which is the food we're eating. I love Dr. Will Bulsiewicz's book. It's called Fiber Fueled, and he's a gastroenterologist. And I talk about him in my book a little bit, but he puts it this way. He says, The average American eats 3 pounds of food a day. So that would be about 1,000 pounds a year and roughly 80,000 pounds of food in a lifetime. And he says there's no compound, no pharmaceutical compound or nutritional supplement that can overcome 80,000 pounds of a poor diet. It's just simply impossible to think that a pharmaceutical pill or a nutritional supplement could do that. So we need to look at the root causes of these conditions. And my book has a lot of graphs and charts, and one of them is the top 10 causes of death. Actually, it's the top 11 because COVID was in there from August of 2021. And I go through each one in my book and I list the science that says how these conditions, how they're linked to a poor diet and how through a plant-based lifestyle, we can avoid coming down with these chronic conditions that leads to so much needless suffering and so many needless deaths in our country.
Going back to doctors and nutrition, I think their actual entire nutritional education is about 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And they have none, they're zero. And there is actually one interview I did where they opened up a university which was teaching medical students, and holistic at the same time. So they go out, understanding whole health and not compartmentalized health. And pharmaceutical very often is to keep you sick because they make profit. It's always the Band-Aid solution. I'm not knocking it. I'm on a couple of pharmaceuticals myself that are life, supporting. But it is when you totally and actually only rely on that and you don't take any ownership of the diet, of, is your lifestyle killing you? Doesn't matter how many pills you take, you are going to pay that price. But if you change your lifestyle, and a lot of that is reducing your stress and your anxiety, because that's kind of the number one killer. But it is also about, again, what we put in our mouths, how we eat it. Are we stuffing and chewing and not digesting, because we're not stopping. Again, another show I did on the joy of cooking and getting the whole family in to cook, a whole family in participating of that. So when you eat the food, you're eating it more with more gratitude, the appreciation, more of the taste of it, more the participation, and you're digesting the food better.
Yes.
So there's so many aspects to it that we are never taught about, and fast food has become the way of living for so many people.
Yes.
And, what nutrition is in there?
Yeah. You mentioned stress and anxiety, and it made me think of a study I mentioned in my book from nutritional neuroscience. And the study showed that those that were eating a plant-based diet had lower levels of stress and anxiety than those who were eating the standard American diet. And specifically, male vegans had lower anxiety and female vegans had lower levels of stress. So it does affect our stress and our happiness when we are able to escape the Meatrix and eat only plants.
Well, I go back to what I was saying before. If the animal is in fear and stress and panic, that does scientifically change the chemistry of their body. You're now eating that body. You're now eating that stress, that chemicalization that's changed. It's got to have an effect on your own chemical factors in your own body.
Yeah, and I've watched enough videos of slaughterhouses to know that every animal that is killed is stressed. I mean, there's simply no way to take the life of an animal that wants to live and think that it's not going to be stressful. There's an oxymoron within the Meatrix that says, humane slaughter. And, that's an oxymoron. You cannot humanely kill a living creature that wants to live. And, life is the most precious gift that all of us have. And so to rob the life of a creature is the exact opposite of humane.
It goes back to being different. Okay, it's four-legged and it speaks a different language, right? But it has every right to be here.
But it's interesting that we do that, but we also put animals in categories. So like in Western culture, we don't eat dogs, but in other parts of the world they do. So it's not all animals. We are taught and indoctrinated, if you will, into loving and caring for, cats and dogs and hamsters. And then we're taught that it's proper to eat and kill cows and pigs and chickens. And this is something that's cultural. And, children at a very young age, there's a study I talk about in my book that they did of children in the US, ages 4 to 8. And almost universally, children said it's wrong to eat a cow. I think 84% said that. 79% said it was wrong to eat a pig. And this is because, children at that age see all animals as being like pets.
Yep,
they have empathy. They have empathy for all living creatures.
Yes.
And so as we grow up and when we reach later, right before adolescence, psychologists say, is when we start engaging in the mental gymnastics, the acrobatics mentally that allow us to say, okay, these animals are food. And they fall in this category. These animals I consider food. These animals I consider pets. And so that is something that is taught and it's evolved. And the study in my book was saying, look, young children are unsuspecting meat eaters. They're eating meat and they don't even realize it. And if we can interrupt that,
yes,
we should interrupt that, because that would have a tremendous impact on climate change. Because the Meatrix is destroying our planet, from an environmental point of view, but it's contributing greatly to climate change. And one of the reasons why is because of methane. And you mentioned that earlier. So methane is a very powerful, potent greenhouse gas. So we know about carbon dioxide. That is the greenhouse gas that's formed from burning fossil fuels like coal and natural gas. But methane, over a 100-year period, is 25 times more potent at trapping heat in our atmosphere than carbon dioxide. So that is a huge problem. The EPA in the United States says the largest source of methane in our country comes from animal agriculture.
Yes.
And it's not talked about.
No.
If you listen to mainstream media, you would think, the worst polluters for climate change are coal and gas, or planes, trains, and automobiles, but they're not talking at all about methane. It's starting to happen a little bit. I think the Atlantic just this past week had a story about how, your diet is burning the planet or something like that. I can't remember the exact name. So it is starting to be reported on. But my book, I hope, will get us talking about this, because we need to have a discussion. The countries that eat the most amount of meat don't even talk about reducing methane to meet, their climate goals. They just ignore it.
And look what's happening in the Amazon. He's burning down the Amazon, so the agricultural could come in there, of meat farming, because it's more profitable. And it's like, the Amazon is a source of cure and energy, and so utterly important to our planet. And yet the greed, right? The greed and the unaccountability. The thing is that we as individuals have to step up and be accountable. If you are going to eat that meat, then you're eating it knowing what it is. That's on you, right? But if you're
go ahead.
But when we're looking at politicians and decision makers that do know the consequences, do know what it's costing us, but don't care because they're going to make a buck, they are criminals, and we should hold them accountable. Right.
I agree. I talk about in my book a study or a report that came out saying that the meat industry in the United States between the year 2000 and 2019 spent $200 million lobbying Congress against enacting climate change legislation. Because because the Meatrix knows it has a climate change problem and it doesn't want to be exposed for it,
right.
And it's bending the ears of politicians saying, don't enact legislation that would harm our operations. Well, for the first time this year, I'm very proud of this administration that in the Inflation Reduction Act, there is a strong climate change component in that. And it's the first piece of climate change legislation that the United States has ever passed. And we know that the United States has historically been the leading cause of climate change. But I downloaded it and looked at it, and it doesn't even talk about methane from animal agriculture, not once. It doesn't talk about meat. It doesn't talk about dairy. So I think it's a great first step, but we need to do so much more. And I really like this quote that Business Insider said. It said, a hamburger is not something bought and paid for, but it's a symbol of a debt that one day must be repaid.
Yes.
And that's because the environmental impact of bringing that burger to you is so great that it's something that we can never pay for. It's something that future generations are going to have to pay. So I say in my book,
we're already saying paying for it. Look at the environment going
on
right now.
We're paying for it now.
Yeah, we are.
Exactly. But if you're in the Meatrix, if you have children or grandchildren and you're eating animal-based foods today, you're all but guaranteeing that your children or grandchildren are going to inherit a debt so vast that it could never be repaid. So I encourage everybody to, if you won't escape the Meatrix for yourself or the animals, do it for your children and grandchildren, because it is destroying our planet, and the debt is going to be so immense that people will never be able to repay it. We're already seeing it now. So.
Well, I would say, Mama Earth is going to evict us. She's giving us plenty of warning. She's having a hissy fit right now. And if we're not paying attention, she will evict us. So we need to get our act together. We had, a Thanksgiving, and my daughter was looking for a faux turkey, and we had to go to 3 places because they were all sold out. Well, what does that tell you is that the more and more the demand is there. And if you don't want to become vegan overnight, it's okay. 2 or 3 vegan meals a week, that will already reduce things considerably. And the more you eat it, the more you're going to want to eat it. But it's like start off somewhere and say, no meat at the table, fish meat at the table, no dairy products at the table for these meals so many times a week, and you will see the difference.
Well, I agree. In the back of my book, a friend of mine has listed, the 5 pillars of adopting a plant-based lifestyle. And one of them is, set your kitchen up for it. What you have in your house goes in your mouth, basically. So, if you want to make the transition, you can do it gradually. It doesn't have to be done overnight.
Right.
And any reduction that you can make is going to be beneficial. So you don't have to you don't have to be 100%. For me, my choice is binary. It's the blue pill or the red pill. Right. And I escaped, and that works for me. Yeah. And that's what I advocate for. But, if you're wanting to help the environment, you don't have to be 100% plant-based. I mean, sure, it's better for the animals if you were, and your health would be probably better. But just from an environmental point of view, any reduction in animal-based foods you can make is going to be beneficial. And like you said, if you do it gradually, you're going to start feeling better, and you're just going to eat less and less and less of it till eventually, who knows, you may be 100% plant-based someday.
I must say I'm 100% at home. You can take my meat, but don't touch my veggies. I'm pretty well a 6 veggie a night girl. I love my veggies, and I love them in noodles or, baked in the oven with turmeric or, whatever. It's, exploring it. And I love making casserole soups, pumpkin time, folks, taking squashes and carrot and ginger soup. There's so many things that we can do. And it's just, again, be willing to explore. And, it's mark how you feel afterwards. Did you have more energy? Did you sleep better? Did you have less inflammation? Because an awful lot of illnesses are inflammatory based, right? So it's, and it, I do understand that turning over into a new diet like this, your body is going to have to readjust. So if you have a reaction like flatulence or whatever, let's say, it's quite normal. It's quite normal. It's not, you're not allergic to the vegetables. It's just that your body is in shock that you're actually giving it vegetables and it needs to adjust, So give it the time.
Yeah. I mean, if you've ever made any big changes in your lifestyle, if you've given up sugar or stopped smoking, there's a little bit of a transition period, and if you've given up caffeine, if you do it immediately, you're going to have a headache, and you just know that it's going to happen. So it's the same way, if you give up animal-based foods overnight, then your body may have a little shock because you've been eating these foods probably for your whole life. If you want to give up caffeine, I recommend you just back off gradually over the course of a week, and you'll never have a headache. And then you won't have to take a cup of coffee just to make the headache go away, which often happens for people when they do that. They suffer through a headache, and, to make it go away, they'll take more caffeine. But it can be done gradually, and doesn't have to be overnight. And your body will change. I talk about in my book how in the movie The Matrix, Neo was he didn't know how many powers he actually had, and when he escaped the Matrix, he became so much stronger. I mean, he could fly. I mean,
but the first jump he didn't. Right.
That's right.
Because that was there. I didn't know what he was capable of. And the
more
and more that he discovered his no, we don't. And the more and more we're willing to discover our capabilities, the more we actually understand how utterly capable we are.
Exactly.
Just give yourself a chance, right? Just because something has been doesn't mean it should always be. And that we need to evolve, we need to change. I say this virtually in every show, but I was given the same 5 years ago, which is the universe is shaking us up to wake us up, for us to step up and change it up and grow up vibrationally, but also grow up as humanity. Stop whining so much. And, let's look at what the problem is and let us be the solution. We have created this mess. The animals didn't do that. Humans did that. Right? We are destroying the planet. No aliens are doing it. No outside forces are doing it. We've done it to ourselves. And until we can look at ourselves as individuals being the solution, we're not going to rectify the problem. And it means every single one of us needs to take that responsibility and accountability of our own choices. And, find that self-love and love of life and that joy of everything, and step into a cleaner lifestyle for yourself, so that you have more energy, more exuberance to share with everyone else. And everybody takes that accountability for themselves, then they're going to bring that collective accountability to everyone else.
Yes, I agree. I think it's kind of foolish for us to think that this will happen from the top down, because the Meatrix and the government and, they're all in bed together. They're making huge amounts of money. The meat industry in the US in 2019 generated $1.2 trillion in our economy. I mean, that's 6% of our GDP. So there are a lot of forces, and I talk about this in my book, that are entrenched in maintaining the status quo. And so we can't really expect this kind of change to happen from above. We have to, like you said, make the choice, make the decisions, take actions, and make this, a one by one by one by one kind of movement. And I think that will, have a great effect, because, companies and corporations want to make money, and we, when we shop with our dollars, we're voting and we're telling them what it is we want. And if more of us are buying vegetables and whole grains and legumes and plant-based foods, well, they're going to start making more of that for us.
Yes, exactly. And I still can't remember what it is. When my daughter listens to this, she's going to go, "Mom, what were you thinking of?" But you make hummus out of it. Chickpeas. There we go.
Chickpeas. Chickpeas, garbanzos.
I mean, incredible amount of nutrition in that, and the kidney beans, all kind of beans there, and nuts. The amount of, nutritions that are in nuts, and I can't eat all of them, but the ones I can eat, I mean, they're just B17 formula, which is, we call the cyanide vitamin, that goes after, dead cells and things like that. I mean, we were given by Mother Nature and the universe every single thing we need to sustain each other. The animals were not here to be a full-time replacement for the foods. We have the ability, and it will take, we can produce plant-based food around the world, and we can grow all of this inside, not even outside, if we're worried about the elements. And we can do so much better if we're just willing to change our climate mental stage. so we can change the climate and all other stages.
Yes. Yeah, we grow in the United States, 70% of the grain that we grow, we feed to animals.
Yeah.
And yeah, and isn't that crazy?
Yes.
And and the funny thing is, it's horrible. Actually, the food conversion ratios that we have in animal agriculture are horrible, and they're not sustainable. And the system would collapse if it didn't have, subsidies by the government. And I'll give you some examples. So like the best feed conversion rates we have are with factory farm chickens. And even then, we're feeding chickens 4.5 times more edible food than we get back from them. And we feed cows 25 times more edible food than we get back from them. And that's edible food to edible food. And a lot of people will say, well, animals eat food that we can't eat, so therefore it doesn't matter. Well, this is food that we're growing to give to them, and we're getting so little back. We could use the same land and grow crops for human consumption. And so it even gets worse when you look at protein for protein. So 80% of the protein that we feed to chickens and 96% of the protein that we feed to cows is lost. We never get that back.
No.
So that is a horrible return on investment.
Yeah.
And it's not sustainable. And if the government wasn't subsidizing all of this, it would collapse. And, we have 7.6 billion people on the planet right now, Sarah. And I think they're saying by 2050, we'll have 9.8 billion. And there's just no way that we can grow crops to feed animals, to feed humans with that many people on the planet. And climate scientists say that the only way we're going to avert the worst case scenarios of climate change is if there's a widespread adoption of a plant-based lifestyle. That's the only way it can happen, because the food conversion ratios just don't add up. You can want it to, but when you do the math, it's not going to be possible. The the land that we use to grow food for animals, if we used it to grow food for humans, we could feed an additional 1 billion people in the US with that land. We wouldn't have to, encroach on any other land. We could give land back to Mother Nature, which would be great for reducing our carbon footprint. The two biggest carbon sinks on the planet are oceans and the earth. So if we could give some of the land back by just growing crops for humans instead of animals, let Mother Nature have that land back. And then globally, if we globally grew crops for human consumption, we could feed an additional 4 billion people.
And
so
why in 2022 do we have famine? Why are people going to school hungry, going to work hungry, going to bed hungry in this day and age? The other big, huge, enormous, gigantic problem is waste.
Yes.
The amount of waste. I know that France passed that restaurants couldn't throw away food. It had to be given to the homeless or organizations. We have this stupid rule, I think it's here in Canada as well, that food cannot be given away from restaurants to the homeless organizations in case somebody gets sick and they'll get sued. Well, this is bloody lawyers that have got in the way of people eating, and we are throwing food away. The waste alone is just absolutely catastrophic, and I just it's sinful.
Yes, it is. It's a major problem. I don't really talk about that in my book, but maybe in my next one.
Yeah, no. When you do a deep dive on that one, you're going to be really shocked, because it's never mind the household, but the restaurants, the supermarkets, even the manufacturing places, something's got a bruise or it doesn't look right or this or that, instead of it organically looking the way it's meant to. Oh, it's not perfectly round, throw it away. And it's just an enormous amount of waste that goes out there, and that has to stop. And I 100% agree with you. Like, if you look at these videos of people playing with cows or calves, and they cry, they love to play. There's that wonderful video of people playing music, and all of the cows from the field come and they're swaying to the music. Why do we look at them as purely a substance for our pleasure? and not as a life form that has every right to live here.
Yeah, I agree. I think the othering that we do of farmed animals, is because we don't think of them as individuals. We think of them as herds or flocks. And so, typically when you think of groups of, it could be people or animals as just a group, and you don't recognize their individuality, then it's easy to, not have empathy for them. And so it's something that allows us to, raise animals in horrible conditions because we don't think of them as individuals. Few people can, ignore a meowing kitten at their back door. Most people will, maybe
let that kitten in.
Take it in. Or few people can ignore a dog that's been hit by a car.
Right.
But we can do, and it's because we recognize cats and dogs as individuals, as unique beings that have a right to a good quality of life. But we don't extend that same way of thinking to farmed animals because we don't recognize them as individuals. And so, and we think of them as being here for food, which, of course, they were bred. They wouldn't exist in the numbers that they do if we didn't forcibly impregnate their mothers and breed them. This is one of the things that people say is, and I talk about this in my book, is, well, what would happen if we stopped eating animals? Where would all the animals go?
Right.
Well, the animals wouldn't exist.
Right.
There would be a few of them, but, we wouldn't have the billions and billions of them that we have because we wouldn't be breeding them so that we could eat them for food.
Yeah.
And the science in my book says it's, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, and it's food that the science in my book says we don't need and we would be better off without. So when you, I could see some people saying, well, it's justifiable to do this to animals because we need them. And so what I'm trying to say in my book is, look, that's something we've been taught. We don't need to do this. I haven't consciously had an animal product. I haven't eaten an animal product in almost 15 years. So it can be done, but people believe that it's natural, necessary, and nutritious when the science in my book says it's none of those things.
Exactly. I mean, look at an elephant, one of the biggest creatures on the planet. Doesn't touch any other meat, folks, right? It survives very, very well. I don't know if you remember a TV show back in the 80s called V. And it was the alien species that came down and it turned humans into basically, cooking them. They were going to herd them all in there. They were freezing them and everything else. And they came with a false thing of, we're going to fatten you up, give you food and things like that. And it was basically for their own substance. And it's like, the horror of they're going to eat us. You have that in the Planet of the Apes, you have it in numerous other things. It's like we're horrified.
There was a Twilight Zone. Yeah, I think there was a Twilight Zone show where aliens had come to the Earth, and this was many years ago that this show was on in the U.S. And at the very end of the book, somebody runs out from the spaceship, and because they had this book, and he said, it's a cookbook.
Yes.
So, the aliens were here and they were going to farm us.
Right, exactly.
And
how do we like that? We don't.
Exactly.
So
we don't
why
like
are we
that
imposing
idea.
it on someone else? Yeah. And, I say I'm 80-20. I am a hell of a lot more than that, but there is that now and again if you're at somebody else's place. But it is, my son has a restaurant. When he cooks it, I try and go as close to vegan as I can, but it's I'm also not going to sweat it if I do fall and I have cream cheese now and again, but at the same time, the earlier we do it, the earlier we get our children to do it. Like my little grandson, he's not going to know any other lifestyle, and my daughter has said if it gets to a point that he's at someone's house and they're serving burgers and they haven't got anything for him and he wishes to try it, that's his choice. Yeah. But most likely by then it will be no, thank you. So,
Mhm.
but it's their free will. And we have free will. And I think if
Exactly.
we have conscious will, yes, we want you to own your choices. We also want you to feel free to make your choices. But please take the information with you when you make these choices.
Right.
Is it
Most people,
necessary?
yeah, most people, I think, are really deep down, they're really good people, and they want to do what's best for themselves and for their family and for the environment. And, we need to, make sure that the things that we're doing are having the desired impact. And I will mention this study from Oxford University that was a 5-year study. They analyzed the inputs and outputs of 38,000 farms in 119 countries. And they found that in the United States, where we eat 3 times more meat per capita than the global average here in the United States, but that the average American could lower their carbon footprint by 73% by becoming plant-based.
Yeah.
There's no other single thing that you could do that could ever come close to reducing your carbon
footprint. Doesn't matter how many electric cars or
plants.
anything else, although they're great,
Right.
it would not have the same impact.
Right.
No.
But our media isn't talking about it.
No.
And
our government isn't talking about it.
Exactly.
It's the individuals like yourself that are talking about it.
Right. But I think people want to do the right thing. And so people are looking at electric cars, they're looking at solar panels on their house, and they're looking at these alternatives, not realizing that it's not having as much of an impact as just simply making better informed choices at the grocery store.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that goes also when you're looking at, please learn to read labels, because if all of the words on the package are things you can't pronounce, then it's been so chemicalized that it is that good for your body either, because we're changing the chemistry of our body with all these other chemicals and preservatives and God knows what else we're putting, synthetics and everything else in there. And as I said, an elephant and many of the other animals, they do not eat meat. They're healthy, huge human, your beautiful animal beings, and we have great capability. And it's really wonderful to see. McDonald's hasn't got there yet, but a lot of the fast food chains are getting there, of offering the vegan. A lot of restaurants are realizing they must have some vegan dishes up there, because more and more that demand is being there. And when you see stores that are running out of various vegan things because of the popularity, that's telling you already that people are incorporating it or changing over. And you know what? How many types of vegetables are there? They are each one of them so flavorful, so many beautiful tastes and ways that you can cook them, along with the legumes and the nuts and the grains and all of that. We have so much more choice, and it's so exciting to kind of learn how to put those together and create new dishes. And that does also your waste, right? Freeze your food if you're not going to eat it,
Yes.
Your waste of how much you throw out, even with the waste of the vegetables, compost it. There's so many steps we can take. And yes, at first it may feel like a bit of a bother, and then it becomes so mainstream that you just don't even think about it anytime. It just be willing to make a change.
I live you're talking about, you just make a change and eventually you don't think anything of it. I was thinking of this the other day. I live in a university town, and I was at the major supermarket near my house, and all the students had come back. And I was waiting in line to self-check out my groceries. And there was like 10 people ahead of me. Well, I started counting. There's 12 cash register stations for self-checkout. And they had 2 employees working that area. And no one thought that was odd. That just seemed totally normal.
Yeah.
But when self-checkout first started, people complained. They said, oh, you wanted me to do your job. You wanted me to you should be doing this. You should be bagging your groceries. You should be scanning the items and not make me do your job. But now people don't even think about it. They just go in, scan their groceries, and, it's just,
and take your own
normal.
bag. Take your own bag that you use over and over again, so we don't have plastic constantly
But
going in there, you know?
yeah, and so it's normal now. No one even questions it.
Right.
So I do think change, can happen, and that's proof of it right there.
But the thing is most people are just afraid of change because it's unknown. But the more you immerse yourself into something, the less intimidating it becomes, the more known it becomes, and so the less fearful it is.
Yes.
It's just take that step. You don't have to, the biggest leap is the first step. Just
Right.
one step at a time. Nobody's asking you to, completely jump off the cliff there. One step at a time. And the more and more conscious that you do your things, the more and more aware of the impact that you're having, and the more and more consciously you choose to change that impact, the more and more it gets easier for you to make all these other changes in your life as well. Even the clothing that you buy, there's just there's so much abuse out there in every market in the name of greed, that
Right.
if we, as you said, we are in control, folks. Don't think the politicians are. Our wallets dictate. We stop supporting the meat industry, we stop supporting the oil industry, we stop supporting fabrics that are made out of petroleum, or we stop supporting the plastics, we stop supporting this, where there's plenty of other alternatives. They have to change, because if they don't change, they go under. So you are dictating which way things go. It's up to you, each and every one of us.
That's right. I love it.
We are the change we seek.
That's right. And we have a choice. And that's what my book's all about. The cover of my book is a hand extending the red pill. And I wanted my book to have that on the cover because it's an invitation. It's an invitation to people to look at the world differently, to take a step, to, try something new, and also to just, I ask people to read my book with an open mind and just follow the science. It's in my book. And I think that will help people make decisions. These aren't my opinions that I present in the book. I present antidotes in my book for my own journey and my own life. But the science is all there. And there's over 400 citations in my book, and there's like 30 pages of citations in the back of it. In case anybody is curious, it's all been documented. They can go down all these rabbit holes that I went down to look at the studies, look at the science, and then, make an informed decision. Because I think once people have the information, then they can make better informed decisions and choices, starting with the food on their plates. So we have the power.
We do. And I've interviewed athletes. They say they became better athletes by being vegan. And now more and more, we're looking at superheroes. We're looking at people, especially men with their six packs, and they're considered the really sexy macho man. And they are plant-based people. And people look at them, and think, oh, no, a burger and a steak's synonymous with being a man. No, it ain't.
Yeah.
No, it ain't.
Yeah.
Somebody that actually puts people and planet and all animal life forms ahead of their own ego, that's the sexiest person out there. So, we have to change the verbiage out there as to look at and stop, stigmatizing, and also stop labeling and thinking you've got to follow that label, right? It's we are the change we seek. We have to change, or we will not survive. And the only way that change is going to come about is through our personal insistence, our own change, our own pressure on government to change, organizations to change. And how we're going to make that happen predominantly is through our wallets.
Yes.
So be the change we seek, folks. How do people get the book? Right. How do people find you?
Okay, great. I'm at stuartwaldner.com, and I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. And they can find my book at Amazon, which it launched yesterday. And I'm super excited because it's became a #1 bestseller on the first day in 3 different environmental categories. I haven't checked it, in a little bit, but it's doing really well. And the ebook is on sale for this week for 99 cents. So there's no excuse not to go and spend 99 cents to get this information so that you can improve your life make the world a better place and help the environment. So I say it's time to take the red pill, escape the Meatrix, eat plants, feel great, and save the planet.
And the spelling of Stuart Waldner is StuartWaldner.com.
That's right.
Right. So,
yes.
And Instagram, Stuart Waldner, Facebook, Stuart Waldner. And so they can comment there. And you know what? The more that you comment, the more that you get the conversation going, the more people share recipes, the more people who are speaking out about it and changing the way they buy, changing the way they live, changing their practices, bit by bit, collectively becomes really big and really impactful.
Yes.
So if we want to have the impact, please do not tell me I'm only one person. It only takes one person to write a book and do the research for us that can enlighten us to move forward. And it takes each one of us to be a part of that collective. Every grain of sand on that beach makes the beach. Yes. Right. So, be that grain of sand, be part of that collective, be part of that difference, because we can. And I know I'd love you to go 100%. I know I'm not. I'm 80, 90%. There is that 10, sometimes 20, depending where I am. But I feel so much better on vegetables. There's so much more choice. And there's so much more choice with, the whole vegan foods and condiments and everything else. So, yeah.
Well, I think that's wonderful, Sarah. And, and I say in the very beginning of my book, and several people have commented on this in the reviews, is that my book is not about blaming and shaming. I don't think that's an effective tool to, you can't win people over by blaming and shaming them. In fact, I spent 23 years of my life, the first 23, eating meat. And then it wasn't until 2008 that I gave up all animal-based foods. So I can't point the finger at people and say, you're wrong and blame and shame them. No, I'm just inviting people to look at the science so they can make more informed decisions and better choices. So that's what I'm all about.
And, my entire platform here is about our own enlightenment. It is about stepping into our own heart, soul, and spirit presence, and understanding we're so much more than just being a humanoid. And we don't have to go along the, sheeple way of barring along just because it has been. And the more accountability and responsibility that we take, and informed responsibility we take over our own lives, the better our lives are, and the better that we can bring our participation, our contribution to each other. So it isn't about the shame and blame, but it is about the knowingness. It is about the awareness, and it is about stepping into that consciousness. Because if you're living the outside in life, it's always going to be a life you're chasing that's never going to fulfill you. When you live from an inside out, we're really being attached to your conscience and really stepping into that space of love, self-love, a love of life and love all living, then you're really going to actually understand what living is all about, and you become that solution. So, but we do have to take that responsibility and ownership of our own choices. And with a book like this, you can make an informed choice, because the science and the facts are there. It's up to you what you do with it, but we hope that it shifts you even a little bit % into the right direction. So, StuartWaldner.com, Amazon for his book, and the title of the book is Escape the Meatrix, not the Matrix, folks, the Meatrix, and all of the facts are there. As a family, read it and kind of look at it and go, I didn't know. What choices are we going to make as a family? What are we willing to cut back on? How willing are we to do this as a practice? And when you're coming in at it together, especially when you involve the children who are already in that conscious space, you will find it's much easier to switch over than you thought. Much easier. Thank you so much for being here. This has been great.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. It's been my pleasure. Thanks.
Everybody, remember, this planet's in trouble. We've put it there, but we are the solution if we're willing to change. And the changes are on so many levels. At least be conscious of the fact that change is needed, and we're inviting you to be a part of it. Until next time, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. Find all of our shows on selfdiscoverymedia.com under podcasts or selfdiscoverymedia/shows. And for all our current shows, go to What's New. We are supported by you, the audience. You'll see a nice big shiny blue button for one-time donations or follow us on Patreon, and you will be able to support us there. We enjoy bringing you such wisdom. And the next show will be up in just a moment.